Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to discover what happens when Truong brings Tieu and Dewey to visit Grandma before Tet, and Grandma's heartfelt blessing makes Tieu break down in happy tears. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The next morning the air feels softer, still cool, but not sharp like before. Tieu wakes up early, not because she has to, but because her heart won't let her sleep too long. Today is the day they'll visit Grandma before Tet, and even though it's supposed to be a simple trip, Tieu keeps checking things again and again. She folds a small scarf, then unfolds it, then folds it again. Truong notices from the doorway. Tieu, why are you nervous? Tieu turns too quickly, pretending she isn't. Nervous? Tieu isn't nervous. Truong walks closer, smiling gently. Your hands keep moving like you're packing for a long journey. Tieu lets out a small breath and looks down. Tieu just wants everything to be nice. Grandma is old. Tieu doesn't want Grandma to worry. Truong steps closer and lightly touches Tieu's shoulder. Grandma will be happy. We're going together. That's already enough. From the bed, Dewey suddenly sits up like a little spring. Go, Grandma. Tieu laughs, the tension breaking. Dewey, you woke up already? Dewey rubs his eyes and nods hard. Dewey go, Grandma. Dewey eat candy. Truong chuckles. You only remember candy. Dewey points at Truong like he's correcting him. Grandma, give Dewey candy. Tieu leans down and fixes Dewey's hair. First, Dewey wash face, then we go. Dewey stands, then pauses, looking at Tieu's belly like it's a person he has to greet. Baby, go Grandma too? Tieu smiles softly. Baby is inside Mom, so baby goes. Dewey's eyes widen. Wow. Baby right inside Mom. Truong laughs quietly, but his eyes soften. He looks at Tieu, at her tiredness, her strength, her tenderness, and he feels that familiar gratitude again. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. They don't have much, but Tieu still prepares a small bag, a few oranges, some tea, and a warm scarf. Truong carries it, even though it's light. Tieu notices and tries to stop him. Truong, Tieu can carry, Truong shakes his head. Truong carries. Today Tieu just walks slowly. Dewey jumps in the middle like a tiny commander. Dad carry, Mum's slow. Tieu laughs. Okay, you two team up against Mum. Truong holds Tieu's hand as they walk. It's not a long trip, but every step feels meaningful. The road is quiet, and the closer they get, the more Truong's expression changes, like he's entering a place that is both familiar and distant at the same time. Tieu notices. Truong, are you okay? Truong nods. Truong is okay. Truong just wants to do this right. Tieu squeezes his hand. We will. When they arrive, Grandma's house is simple, older than the wind, but warm in the way only lived-in places can be. Before Truong can even call out, the door opens. Grandma stands there, thinner than Truong remembers, but her eyes are sharp enough to see straight through worry. She looks at Truong first. For a second, no one speaks. Then Grandma's lips tremble, and she reaches for Truong's face with both hands, like she needs to confirm he's real. Truong, Grandma whispers. You came. Truong's throat tightens. Yes, Grandma. Truong came. Grandma pulls Truong into a hug that's surprisingly strong for her age. Truong freezes at first, then holds her back carefully. Tieu stands behind, holding Dewey's hand. Dewey peeks out shyly. Grandma releases Truong, then turns to Tieu. Her gaze moves slowly, taking in Tieu's face, her tired eyes, her gentle posture, and the curve of her belly. Grandma's expression changes into something deep and grateful. Tieu, Grandma says softly. Thank you. Tieu's eyes widen. Grandma. Tieu. Grandma shakes her head. You don't have to explain. Grandma can see. You've been carrying a lot. Tieu swallows hard. Truong watches, feeling his chest tighten. Not with fear, but with emotion. Grandma reaches for Tieu's hands. Her hands are warm, rough, real. She holds Tieu like she's holding a blessing. "Thank you for staying by Truong," Grandma says. "Thank you for giving him a home and giving him a reason to keep walking forward." Tieu's eyes fill. "Grandma, Tieu loves Truong." Grandma nods slowly. "That's why Grandma thanks you." Dewey suddenly steps forward, brave now that he senses warmth. "Grandma!" Grandma's face brightens instantly. "Oh, Dewey!" Dewey lifts his arms. "Grandma, hug!" Grandma laughs and bends carefully to hug him. "You grew so big!" Dewey points at his own cheeks proudly. "Do you eat potato?" Grandma bursts into laughter. "Potato made you strong?" Dewey nods seriously. "Yes!" Everyone laughs, and just like that, the heavy feeling disappears. The house is filled with light. Inside, Grandma pours tea and sets out simple snacks. Truong helps without being asked, like he's trying to repay time with action. Tieu keeps glancing at Truong, worried he'll suddenly look distant, but Truong stays present, calm, gentle. He listens to Grandma's stories even if he doesn't remember all the details, and instead of panicking, he simply holds the moment. At one point, Grandma reaches under her pillow and pulls out a small red pouch. Like a tiny early lycée, she places it in Tieu's palm. Tieu tries to refuse immediately. "Grandma, no." Grandma closes Tieu's fingers over it. "Take it, not because it's big, because it's Grandma's heart." Tieu's lips tremble. "Grandma." Grandma looks at Tieu's belly and smiles. "For the baby too, and for you. You're a good woman, Tieu. You brought peace into Truong's life." Truong's eyes turn wet. He quickly looks away, but Grandma notices anyway. Grandma reaches out and taps Truong's hand. "And you, Truong, don't make her carry everything alone. A woman can be strong, but she shouldn't have to be strong every second." Truong nods, voice thick. "Yes, Grandma." Grandma leans back, satisfied. "Good. Then Grandma can sleep well." Dewey tilts his head. "Grandma sleep now?" Grandma laughs. "Not now, little tiger. Grandma still wants to see you eat." Dewey beams. "Dewey, eat." Before they leave, Truong stands in front of Grandma with Tieu beside him. It looks simple, but it feels like a promise being made. "Grandma," Truong says, "Truong will take care of Tieu. Truong will take care of Dewey. Truong will take care of our baby." Grandma nods slowly, eyes shining. That's all Grandma wants. Tieu bows her head slightly, and for a second she can't stop the tears. Grandma wipes Tieu's cheek with her thumb. "Don't cry. Crying is okay, but today, Grandma wants you to smile. You have a family. You have love." Tieu laughs through tears. "Yes, Grandma." On the way home, Dewey walks between them, holding one hand each, swinging his arms like a happy pendulum. "Grandma love Dewey," he announces. Truong smiles. "Yes, Grandma loves Dewey." Dewey looks up at Tieu. "Grandma love baby too." Tieu nods. "Yes." Truong glances at Tieu. "Tieu, are you happy?" Tieu nods, eyes still wet. "Yes, very happy." Truong squeezes her hand. Truong is happy too. When they get home, Tieu starts to move toward the kitchen automatically. Truong stops her. "Tieu," Truong says gently. "Today, Tieu rests." Tieu blinks. "Rest?" Truong nods. "Yes, Truong promised, Grandma." Tieu opens her mouth to argue, but Truong is already rolling up his sleeves with a serious expression that makes her laugh. Dewey gasps. "Dad cook." Truong looks at Dewey. "Dad cook." Dewey claps. "Potato." Tieu laughs, both amused and touched. "Truong, you want to fry potatoes?" Truong nods. "Yes." Tieu teach Truong. Then Truong does. Tieu's eyes soften. "Okay, Tieu will teach." They stand side by side in the small kitchen. Tieu moves slowly, carefully, speaking gently like she's teaching a child. Not because Truong is incapable, but because she wants him to feel safe learning. "First, we peel," Tieu says. Truong holds the potato and peeler, concentrating like it's an important mission. Dewey stands on a chair nearby, watching like a supervisor. Dad, careful, Tieu laughs. Yes, Dad, careful. Truong peels, a little too thick. Tieu tries not to laugh, but Dewey points instantly. Dad wastes potato. Truong looks at his thick peel and sighs. Okay, Truong will peel thinner. Tieu gently corrects his hand position. Like this, slow, not rushed. Truong nods seriously. Yes, teacher Tieu. Tieu giggles. Don't call Tieu teacher. Truong smiles. Then what? Boss? Dewey shouts. Mum, boss. They all laugh again. Tieu slices the potatoes into even pieces and shows Truong how to do the same. Truong tries his best. Some pieces are thick, some thin, but he's trying, and that matters more than perfect shapes. When the oil heats up, Tieu becomes more serious. Truong, careful. Oil is dangerous. Truong nods. Truong understands. Tieu stands slightly behind him, guiding. Put in slowly, don't throw. Truong lowers the potato pieces carefully. The oil sizzles. Truong's eyes widen. Dewey jumps excitedly. Sound! Sound! Tieu smiles. That means it's frying. Truong stands there focused, stirring gently, exactly like Tieu taught. He doesn't rush. He doesn't show off. He simply does it with quiet care, like he's building something important. A few minutes later, Truong lifts the first batch out. Tieu leans in to look. Truong waits like he's being judged. Tieu smiles. Not bad. Truong exhales dramatically. Yes! Dewey reaches immediately. Dewey, eat! Tieu quickly slaps Dewey's hand lightly. Hot! Dewey shakes his hand and pouts. Hot! Truong blows on one piece gently and hands it to Dewey. Small bite. Dewey takes a bite, eyes widening. Then he chews dramatically and nods like a food critic. Dad, potato. Good. Tieu laughs. Really? Dewey nods hard. Yes. Truong looks at Tieu and there's something in his eyes. Pride, but also love. Tieu, Truong says softly. Truong wants to do more like this, so Tieu doesn't get tired. Tieu's smile trembles. Truong continues, voice gentle. Truong doesn't remember everything from before, but Truong remembers this feeling. The feeling of being needed, being home, being with Tieu and Dewey. Tieu's eyes fill again, but this time she doesn't look sad. She looks relieved. She nods. That's enough. That evening they eat together again. Simple food, warm potatoes, soup, rice. Dewey sits between them, humming happily, occasionally shouting, Dad fry, like it's the funniest thing he's ever witnessed. Truong looks at Tieu across the table. Thank you for teaching, Truong. Tieu smiles. Thank you for trying. Dewey raises his little cup. Family. Truong laughs and raises his cup too. Family. Tieu raises hers last, eyes shining. Family. Outside, the night is calm. Inside, the house is warm. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because they're choosing happiness in the middle of everything. And for Truong, that choice feels stronger than any memory. That night, after dinner, Dewey is still buzzing with energy like the potatoes gave him superpowers. Dad fry again tomorrow, Dewey declares, hugging his belly like a satisfied little king. Truong laughs and gently lifts Dewey off the chair. Tomorrow Dad fry again, if Dewey listens. Dewey nods fast. Dewey, listen! Tieu rinses her hands and looks at Truong with a soft, almost shy smile. Truong, you really did well today. Truong pretends to act serious. Because Tieu is a good teacher. Tieu rolls her eyes, but she's clearly pleased. Okay, but don't get too confident. Dewey interrupts, pointing at the door. Mum, night, mosquito come. Tieu laughs. Yes, we go inside. They move into the main room. The house is quiet in a comforting way, like everything is settling. Truong helps Dewey wash up, then carries him to bed. Dewey wraps his arms around Truong's neck like he's afraid Truong might disappear. Dad, Dewey whispers, suddenly sleepy. Truong pats Dewey's back. Dad, stay. Tieu pauses in the doorway, her expression softening immediately. Truong nods. Dad stays. Dewey sleep. Dewey's eyes flutter, then he mumbles, Baby, good night too. Tieu smiles, one hand resting on her belly. Baby says good night. Dewey finally relaxes, breathing slow and even. Truong stays a little longer, watching Dewey's face smooth out in sleep. Then Truong quietly steps out and closes the door halfway. Tieu is waiting in the main room. She looks tired, but it's a good tired, like the kind you get after a day that actually meant something. Truong speaks first. Tieu, today was a good day. Tieu nods. Yes, Grandma's words. Tieu keeps hearing them. Truong sits beside Tieu, careful not to crowd her. Grandma thanked Tieu. Truong thinks, Grandma is right. Tieu lowers her eyes. Truong's voice is gentle but firm. Tieu has been holding this family together. Truong knows it. Even if Truong didn't remember, Truong can still see it. Tieu swallows hard. Tieu didn't do it alone. Truong also worked hard. Truong shakes his head. Truong works, but Tieu carries the heart of this house, and Truong doesn't want Tieu to carry it alone anymore. Tieu looks up slowly. What do you mean? Truong takes a breath, like he's making a promise out loud so it becomes real. From now until Tet, Truong will do more. Truong will help more. Truong will cook sometimes, clean sometimes, take care of Dewey more. Tieu needs rest. Tieu's eyes glisten. Truong, you don't have to say it like a big promise. Truong smiles softly. Truong wants to. Because when Truong sees Tieu smile, Truong feels like, that's the best thing. Tieu laughs quietly through emotion. You're making Tieu cry again. Truong reaches out and wipes the corner of her eye with his thumb. Then cry, but happy cry. For a moment they just sit there. Outside, the night air is calm. Inside, it feels warm, even with the simple walls and simple furniture. Then Tieu suddenly stands up slowly. Okay, if Truong wants Tieu to rest, Tieu will rest. But first, Tieu wants to prepare something small for Tiet. Truong blinks. Prepare what? Tieu points to a corner of the room where a few old decorations are stored. We don't have much, but Tieu wants the house to look happy, for Dewey, for baby. Truong stands immediately. Truong helps. Tieu tries to protest. But you said Tieu rests, Truong grins. Rest means no heavy work, but light work together is happy work. Tieu can't argue with that. She nods. Okay. They move slowly, quietly, like they don't want to wake Dewey. Truong pulls out an old string of lights. Some bulbs still work, some don't. Tieu finds a small red decoration, slightly faded but still bright enough to feel festive. Truong holds the lights up. We can hang this here. Tieu tilts her head, thinking, better near the doorway so when Dewey wakes up he sees it first. Truong nods. Good idea. They hang the lights carefully. Truong tests them. Half of them glow, half stay dark. Tieu laughs softly. It's okay, half light is still light. Truong smiles at her. Like us? Tieu pauses, then her smile turns tender. Yes, like us. They hang one decoration near the wall, then another near the doorway. It's not fancy, but it changes the feeling of the space immediately. The house looks a little more alive. Tieu steps back and presses her lips together. Dewey will be happy. Truong looks at the decorations, then at Tieu. Truong is happy too. Just then, a soft knock comes from outside. Tieu freezes for a second. Truong stands and opens the door. It's a neighbour auntie with a friendly face holding a small bundle. Oh, Truong, Tieu, I saw you come back today. I heard you visited Grandma. Tieu nods politely. Yes, auntie. The auntie smiles. Good, good. Before Tet, family visits are important. She glances inside and notices the lights. Oh, you're decorating, Tieu laughs shyly. Just a little. The auntie holds out the bundle. Here, I made some sticky rice cakes earlier than usual. Not many, but take some. For Dewey. And for Tieu, you're pregnant. You need to eat. Tieunu's eyes widen. Auntie, no, we can't. Truong gently accepts it with both hands. Thank you, Auntie. Truong appreciates it. The auntie waves her hand. Don't talk too much, just take it. We're neighbours. She leans closer and lowers her voice, warm but firm. Truong, take care of Tieu. A woman like her is rare. Truong nods seriously. Yes, Auntie, Truong will. The auntie smiles, satisfied. Good. Good night. When the door closes, Tieu looks at the bundle, suddenly emotional again. Why are people so kind today? Truong sets it on the table. Because Tieu is kind. Kindness comes back. Tieu breathes out slowly. If Dewey sees this, he'll dance. Truong chuckles. Then tomorrow morning, we watch Dewey dance. They clean up the small mess from decorating. Truong insists on sweeping while Tieu sits for a minute. Tieu pretends to complain, but she's smiling. Later, when everything's quiet again, Tieu stands near the doorway and looks out at the night. Truong, she says softly. Tieu feels safe. Truong walks to her side. With Truong, Tieu nods. With Truong, with Dewey, with baby, even if life is hard. Tieu feels like we can still be happy. Truong's throat tightens. He turns his head slightly, blinking. Truong feels the same. Tieu looks up at him. Do you ever feel sad about memories? Truong thinks for a moment. Then he answers honestly. Sometimes. But today, when Grandma held Truong, when Dewey laughed, when Tieu smiled, Truong realized something. Tieu waits. Truong's voice becomes soft but certain. Truong doesn't need the past to prove anything. Truong just needs to protect what Truong has now. Tieu's eyes shine. She leans her head against Truong's shoulder. Truong gently wraps an arm around her, holding her like something precious. Inside the bedroom, Dewey murmurs in his sleep, then goes quiet again. Tieu whispers, almost like a prayer. Tet this year, please be peaceful. Truong nods. It will, and even if it's not perfect, Truong will make it warm. Tieu smiles into Truong's shirt. Truong is becoming very good at saying sweet things. Truong laughs quietly. Maybe Truong is learning. Tieu lifts her head. Learning what? Truong looks down at her, eyes gentle. Learning how to be a real family. They stand there a little longer, just Truong and Tieu, in a small house with half-working lights and a heart full of hope. And for the first time in a long time, Tieu feels like happiness isn't something far away. It's already here, holding her close.